Tegan is in recovery from an eating disorder. Looking back now, the warning signs were clear.
At first it was like a fitness journey that I thought I was on. I don't know now how true that is, but at the time I was very convinced that it was a fitness journey and lost a lot of weight. People were congratulating me, so I thought it was a good thing, which it did feel like at the time, but I wasn't eating nearly enough as what I should have been, and I was counting calories and stressing about food, and there was things that I was actually becoming scared of certain foods.
In the last few years, these drugs have dominated social media, with stars like Oprah Winfrey and Sharon Osbourne speaking openly about being on some form of weight loss medication. So what are these injections? Originally, the drugs were designed to treat diabetes, but it was later discovered they could help with general weight loss. The most well-known brands are Ozempic, Wegovy and Mounjaro. Each of the drugs either contain semaglutide or tirzepatide, which suppresses appetites by slowing digestion and mimicking the hormone that tells your brain when you are full. The drugs are available through the NHS in Scotland if you meet a very strict criteria, but more widely to the general public through private online clinics. Recently, Tegan was recommended a weight loss drug by someone unaware of her past, something she fears at one point she would have considered.
I know that I would have probably, if offered that, like maybe around a year or so prior, I definitely would have said yes. And it wouldn't have been good for me at all, because being in such a bad situation already, I can't even imagine how much worse it would have been if that conversation had happened prior to me being in recovery, and it had been something that I would consider, because I feel like I'd be quite ashamed now to admit, but I probably would have taken it.
Concerns are now being raised that there's not enough checks in place to ensure these drugs don't end up in the wrong hands.
These drugs can be very dangerous for people who have an eating disorder, because people can experience a very difficult to resist urge to lose weight. So these drugs become a very tempting option, even when they're not really medically suitable, and when losing weight could be quite dangerous for somebody. We'd like to see clinics or pharmacies screening everybody who's getting access to these medications to make sure that they don't have an eating disorder. And if they do, or if there might be a risk of an eating disorder, then they should be pointed towards proper psychological support for that instead.
To qualify for a private prescription, you have to have a BMI of over 30 or over 27 if you also have an obesity-related condition. Sheila has been on Wegovy for just over a year now. She's lost 6 stone and has dropped from a size 22 to a size 12, and the health benefits have been life-changing for her.
I have fluctuated with about 6 stone for most of my adult life, going from about 11 stone up to nearly 17 stone a few times in my life. Never really managed to be able to sustain the weight loss and ended up putting it back on again. So I got to last August and approaching 60 this year, and I thought I have to do something different. It was affecting my health. I was pre-diabetic, my cholesterol was sky high, I had really bad digestive problems and arthritis in my knee. And I just thought, I can't do this again. I can't lose this weight and pile it all back on again. I have to do something I've never done before.
Obesity costs the NHS up to around £600 million each year. Weight loss drugs like Wegovy and Mounjaro are also thought to reduce the risk of multiple different types of cancers, as well as heart, liver and kidney disease.
I've reversed all the adverse health problems that I had. So I'm no longer pre-diabetic, my cholesterol's normal, my digestive problems are more or less completely gone away, and the pain in my knee is nowhere near what it was in terms of arthritis after removing, 6 stone. So I feel absolutely fantastic.
Sheila gets her prescription through an online clinic based in London, but she's never met a clinician in person. So how do you ensure that these medications don't fall into the wrong hands?
The whole point of having multiple checks along the way to try and identify anyone who would be at either a healthy or a low BMI or exhibiting any kind of red flag behaviors of anorexia, bulimia, things like that. From our experience, we haven't had that, but I think the slight challenge with Second Nature is because we're a slightly more expensive program, focusing on habit change with dietitian support, we're not the cheapest option out there. So, and because we have multiple steps to check, I imagine there might be other pharmacies out there that are a bit cheaper and maybe aren't quite as rigorous, that maybe it would be easier to get through that.
Campaigners feel making the drugs more widely available through the NHS could regulate access to them more. The Scottish Government says the threshold for accessing these drugs is very likely to come down as research continues.
For me, as a pharmacist, it makes sense when a drug is brand new to use it carefully with the people who will benefit most at first, and then generally grow the use of that drug once you have learned well how to use it. And that seems to be the process with this class of drugs. Find how to use them safely, how to use them best, what sort of support is required alongside them before we make them more widely available.
As part of her recovery, Tegan has been creating photo albums to remind her of her favourite memories, some of which may not have been possible without accepting help. While she recognises the dangers of weight loss drugs now, she hopes others who could be more vulnerable can be protected.